All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking some of those heavy business buzzwords and totally demystifying them by looking at nature's ultimate blueprint for survival. We're talking about the absolutely critical shift from linear thinking to systemic thinking. It's a journey from that old, destructive take, make, dispose industrial model straight toward a regenerative, circular economy, and we're doing it by learning exactly how natural ecosystems operate. You know, we hear the word ecosystem thrown around constantly in the business world, but by grounding it in actual biology, we can unlock entirely new ways to solve incredibly complex problems.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to journey from abstract biological concepts directly into real practical applications. First up, systems versus ecosystems. Then, the 4 industrial principles. After that, how to actually influence a system. Then we'll break down human-made typologies. And finally, wrap up with designing a circular future. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Systems versus biological ecosystems. We are going from a pile of sand to a living forest. Okay, let's start with a general system. According to the legendary systems thinker Donella Meadows, a system basically boils down to 3 things: elements, interconnections, and a purpose. Think of a pile of sand. That is not a system, right? It's literally just a collection of disconnected grains. But a football team? Now that is a true system. You've got players, those are your elements, and they're interconnected by rules and strategies, all working toward the very distinct purpose of winning the game. You can really see how the connections are what bring those completely separate pieces to life and give them an actual function.
Now, things get super interesting when you add the word eco into the mix, which, by the way, comes from the Greek word for home. A biological ecosystem takes a general system and makes it alive. It combines living, biotic elements, the biosynosis, so your plants and animals, with a non-living, abiotic environment, the biotope, like the soil, sunlight, and water. Together, they are constantly exchanging energy and matter to maintain life. It's like this continuous, closed-loop dance. Unlike our football team, the purpose here isn't to just win a game. It's to endlessly sustain and develop life through incredibly complex, interdependent relationships.
Moving on to Section 2, Principles of Industrial Ecosystems. Or to put it simply, nature's rules for industry.
If nature is our greatest teacher, we can take its ecological rules and apply them directly to human industries to finally stop this depleting linear cycle we're stuck in. Researcher Joni Korhonen actually nailed down 4 core principles of an industrial ecosystem, proving that sustainable businesses really just need to mimic nature. First is roundput, which we're going to unpack in just a second. Second is diversity. Just like a robust rainforest, an industrial system survives and thrives when it has diverse actors, varied supply chains, and deep cooperation. Third is locality. Industries have to fundamentally respect and use their local environmental conditions instead of constantly extracting from the other side of the planet. And fourth is gradual change. This means developing sustainably over time using renewable resources, kind of like how nature relies on the steady, consistent input of solar energy to drive its own evolution.
So let's zoom in on roundput for a minute, because this is an absolute game changer. In a natural ecosystem, the very concept of waste simply does not exist. It's a human invention. The fallen leaves from an oak tree aren't trash. They become the nutrient-rich food for the fungi and soil bacteria below. In a perfect industrial ecosystem, we actively mimic that exact biological mechanism. The waste, or the byproduct, from one factory becomes the essential, valuable input, the food, for another neighboring facility. It completely flips how we view industrial byproducts on its head.
All right, Section 3, How to Influence a System. Let's talk about finding those crucial leverage points.
Knowing the rules of nature is fantastic, but to actually change our failing economy, we have to know how to effectively pull the strings of these complex networks we've built. We return to Donella Meadows here. She taught us that interconnected problems absolutely demand interconnected solutions. If we want to fix massive global issues, we can't just treat the symptoms at the surface level. We have to zoom all the way out, look at the whole, and target the root causes governing the system's behavior. It is a mindset shift that gives us the freedom to spot incredible brand new opportunities right where everyone else just sees roadblocks.
When you map out Meadows' 12 leverage points, you see exactly where to intervene. Tweaking constants like taxes or subsidies actually has a surprisingly low impact on how the overall system behaves. Sure, they're easy to change, but they don't fix the foundation. But as you move toward high-impact interventions, you start hitting things like changing the system's actual rules, changing its core goals, or ultimately transcending the entire paradigm. And wow, that is where the massive transformational power lives. If you want to change the world, you don't just change the tax rate, you change the core goal of the entire economic engine.
Which brings us to Section 4, Human-Made Ecosystem Typologies. This is where humans step up as ecosystem architects. We can take these natural laws and apply them to the real world, where we design complex economic networks. When we categorize these human-made ecosystems, 4 main typologies emerge. As these networks form, the connections naturally shift depending on their ultimate purpose. These structures map out exactly who the actors are, suppliers, researchers, policymakers, and what overarching goal they are organized to achieve. Let's break these 4 down real quick to see how they function.
First up, we have the business ecosystem. In this setup, individual companies are deeply nested in their local environment. They absolutely do not operate in a vacuum. They co-evolve with their suppliers, their distributors, and yep, even their fiercest competitors. Just like predator and prey in the wild, their capabilities align over time, and they fundamentally share the fate of the network as a whole. If the local environment fails, they all go down with the ship.
Next is the innovation ecosystem. Here, the primary goal is advancing tech. This model leans heavily on open innovation. So, instead of a single company fiercely guarding its internal secrets, it looks outward. The network connects brilliant entrepreneurs with massive research labs, venture capital, and government institutions. They seamlessly stitch together their individual strengths to build entirely new technological solutions that no single entity could have ever built on its own.
Then we have the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Think of this as the incredibly fertile soil you need to grow a startup. It's an environment built on interconnected pillars: supportive policies, accessible cash, culture, and top-tier talent. The goal here isn't just surviving, it's about pure market disruption and generating entirely new wealth. By nurturing these startups with the exact right resources, the ecosystem gives innovative ideas the runway they need to launch and totally disrupt the status quo. Finally, the industrial ecosystem. This is where biological mimicry gets extremely literal. The actors here are manufacturers and consumers, and the goal is the physical transformation of our unsustainable linear industries. Picture a massive eco-industrial park, where the physical exchange of matter and energy is explicitly mapped out. The output of one facility directly feeds into another, creating a flawless, closed loop. This is roundput brought to life at scale.
And that brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Designing a Circular Future. Time to put the ecosystem approach to work.
The absolute biggest takeaway from our explainer today boils down to this. You just cannot solve interconnected, complex problems with isolated, linear solutions. Designing a circular economy is not just about, trying to recycle a little more plastic. It is a fundamental paradigm shift. It requires us to map out the entire system, deeply understand those flows of energy and matter, and intentionally design the waste out right from step 1.
When we successfully pull this off, we get a true circular economy ecosystem. It's a multi-actor entity where companies, municipalities, universities, and everyday citizens all play these perfectly complementary roles. Bound together by a shared goal of resource circularity and open knowledge sharing, we can merge domains and build human-made networks that are every bit as resilient, adaptable, and honestly, as beautiful as a natural forest. We stop fighting nature, and we start designing with it.
So, I want to leave you with a thought to really chew on. Take a close look at your own work, your supply chains, your industry. Ask yourself, are you operating as an isolated element, just acting like a disconnected pile of sand? Or are you ready to embrace the interconnections, find your leverage points, and actually start building a thriving, regenerative ecosystem?